Hello YouTube, my name is Zayn26 and today I'm going to be showing you my piston and block-based redstone mechanics. This covers all of the stuff that is based on piston and redstone mechanics. It follows the path of blocks as conductors with redstone, and it goes all the way to getting a 2-bit display and a giant clock that I made. It goes by 20 minutes, which is how long a Minecraft day takes. So first things first, if you haven't seen my first video, you might want to, because a couple of the things I'm going to talk about aren't explained in this video, only in the previous one. So first up is how to power pistons. You can power them by either directly linking a wire into the piston or by powering them with a redstone repeater. You should also note that if the wire is not going directly into the piston, it will not power it. The next thing is that these are sticky pistons and these are not. This is what they look like in terms of difference. This is sticky piston, and this is a normal piston. The difference in real life is that they do this. The non-sticky pistons will push a block up, or to the side, or down, but it will not pull it back. Sand is affected by gravity, so it falls back down. In this scenario, the sand still gets pulled back down because this is a sticky piston. Despite it being affected by gravity, it's still pulled back down. Also, you should note that the repeater causes a slight delay. The next subject is the fact that different types of blocks and different combinations of wiring will allow you to push a current through a block, which is the concept of band memory. It's essentially a hard drive in Minecraft. First up is using a wire followed by a repeater. The repeater goes into a block, repeater comes out of the block and powers this light. You should notice that this takes some delay as it goes through first the repeater, then the block, then a second repeater, and then it powers the light. Next thing is that transparent blocks do not allow current through them. For example, as opposed to that. Next thing is the fact that you can power the current through the block as long as the wire is going directly into the block. Using a repeater, it can receive the signal and put it into whatever you're aiming it at. Yeah, that's the second time that's happened. So, if I power this, it will go through the block into the repeater and power whatever you're pointing it at. In the backwards version of that, you can do the exact same thing and power the repeater, send the signal through the block, and power redstone on the other side. However, you cannot ignore the fact that you have to put a repeater in. If you put no repeater in, despite the wire going straight through, it will not go through the block, even if it is solid block as opposed to a transparent one. Of course, this might be useless unless you were doing this, in which case it's basically a straight line of wire. Next concept is how you could rotate a single circle with pistons. It is important to note that you cannot use a piston to push the extension of a piston. It just doesn't work. So, as I'm powering them, you will notice that some of them are getting pushed out of the system because as they get pushed out of the system, there's only enough room for so many different blocks. can continue to push them, and I'm using this red wall as an example. It started over there, I believe, and now it's over here. Of course, I accidentally broke this, so I can't continue the cycle. This is an automatic version of that. It will take this red block and turn it in a circle indefinitely until I turn it off. So this one is very simple. It simply incorporates a clock with redstone wire going out of it with specific delays to each individual piston. That one's a really simple device. Not very hard to build if you know what you're doing. This next thing is what I like to call an emergency shutoff latch. Uses a sticky piston and the concept that you can't put a current through a diagonal block. If you put a block here, this little wire right here that doesn't really exist will go absolutely nowhere. It will just power this, and it will go back to the concept of this block right here. You can't use the current going into a block to get a current coming out of it unless they're directly connected. So I power that, it goes there, and if I power the piston, it blocks the current. I should note that if you do this with a piece of glass, it will have no effect whatsoever. This is what I like to call a flash latch. It uses the exact same principles of that. However, it simply powers this and then powers that. So you get a flash of current. This is important because it uses one tick of delay until it powers this, but it uses no ticks of delay to power the piston. The sand is there just so you can see that it moves back down. This next device is a combination of all of those previous devices, and it creates this. Before I get into this, I should show you something else that I built, which is way over there in the logic gate section. I felt it wouldn't be appropriate in this area because it was technically a logic gate. It's a form of band memory which uses the concept of this, and it puts glass blocks in there so it doesn't power through the glass blocks. You put a power source in the center, the power goes through a solid block but not a glass block, and it provides data. That data goes through here and powers the different regions, which turns things on and off. So I will be right back. And here we are. This is an 8-bit memory band, or 1 byte. It uses these 8 blocks as individual bits of memory. The concept is that this torch powers a repeater, the current goes through this block to a receiving repeater, and then powers this piston. As the circuit goes around in a circle, glass blocks will intermittently move into the path of this repeater and cut off the current. It's very simply put, it is a hard drive in Minecraft. You'll note that as a glass block puts into position, this one will go down, and as a dirt block moves into position, this one will go back up. The concept of this machine is that these two pistons will fire simultaneously, and these two pistons will fire simultaneously. This one will power after 4 ticks of delay, and so will this one, and these two will power after a single tick of delay, or no ticks of delay depending on how you look at it. The purpose behind this is that it makes the system more consistent, and it allows you to use more memory rather than the older version way over there, which simply used a missing version of this block, and it only made the pistons go off one at a time. It's somewhat inconsistent and slower than this method, which uses two pistons simultaneously firing to generate a more consistent and faster turning of this band of memory. Back to this machine, it is a 40-bit memory loop with a 4 pixel 2x2 resolution display. If I pull this switch, power turns off these two pistons. I know it looks overly complex, but the concepts behind it are very simple. This area especially looks a bit complex, but it's actually very simple. It's just putting this block here and this block here in the path of these two currents, which cause the entire circuit to rotate. That current goes from the clock into that piston section and this piston section. So, first I will turn the clock on, because obviously no matter what I do with this switch, if the clock's not on, it's not going to rotate the machine. Next part of it is that these redstone torches will power these repeaters. Through the repeaters go through this block. The block on the other side is a piece of redstone wire. As I said before, it doesn't matter if it's a wire or a repeater. I just use this method because you don't want the signals to get overcrossed with each other. This specific section goes to this bottom left-hand pixel. Each section has its own little part. There, I tried to make them as equally spaced in terms of ticks as I could. Looks like 3 ticks, including the one from the torch. So, I will turn this machine on, and we should get these 2 lights, then these 2 lights, then these 2 lights, then these 2 lights, and so on and so forth. Now let's see what it looks like behind the scenes. Now you'll note this repeating pattern of a glass block here, glass block there, and a glass block here, glass block there, glass block there, etc., etc. That pattern that you see right here is actually the same throughout the entire memory band, and the purpose is because these 2 blocks will turn on or off depending on which depending on which block they're using. So the interior is just glass glass, solid solid, glass glass, solid solid. The exterior is solid glass, solid glass, solid glass, solid glass, solid glass. And again with the rain. I cannot tell you how annoying that gets. So, these 2 represent opposite corners, and the far 2 represent opposite corners. It makes it simpler, so I can just put these in the center and these on the outside. It gets this nice little pattern of what looks like an oval shape. So this machine will work perpetually and will never break because the circuitry continues in the same pattern. It should also be noted that if you make a mistake in this band memory, it will only come up as often as that mistake does. So this is a 10-bit individual band. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there are 4 of them, which makes 40 bits. So if I made a mistake here by accidentally putting a glass block here, that glass block will only come up every 5 cycles, because these 2 represent 1 cycle, 1 cycle, 1 cycle, 1 cycle, and a 5th cycle. So it will only come up as often as the error does. So if the error is 1 in 5, the error only comes up 1 in every 5 times. The next machine is one of my own design. I used a couple of methods that I've seen before, and I built this massive and often thought of as overly complex machine. It is a 20-minute clock. These are the credits. That's my Minecraft screen name. Minecraft days are exactly 20 minutes. It's about noon right now, so it takes 10 minutes to get from noon to midnight, so that's a 20-minute day. It should also be noted that the tick and time of day logic is a bit glitchy. So if you sleep or use single player commands to change the time of day, or even use what I've been using, which is too many items, if you use that, it can distort this machine, and it will often result in this pushing too early and removing a lot of the circuitry. It will simply corrupt the machine. This is a 1-second counter, and each of these buttons in here represents an additional 10 seconds, 1 minute, and 10 minutes. So I will start this machine up and see what happens. As you'll probably notice, this one goes from 1 to 0 or 1 to 10. This one only goes from 0 to 5 because there are, after all, 60 seconds in a minute. The result of this was a slightly longer memory band because this one used 10 and this one needed to use 12 because I need 2 cycles. This one uses 2 cycles, 0 through 0 through 1. So it gives me 2 cycles. This one gives me 0 through 5, which is... I'm just confusing myself. You understand what I mean. Now once this gets to a minute, I'll just stop it. Uh-oh. A little glitchy there. A little bit glitchy right there. It had the middle one still on. Anyway, I decided that I would need to split this up into 2 sections because one giant band of memory would just be overly complicated when connecting it to the pistons that power this display. So I went for 2 bands. Each of these different individual bands represents a specific section of the display. This section right here represents the middle, which is this section right here. This took a while. This took a lot of planning, so I'd appreciate it if no one accused me of stealing this idea from someone else or something similar to that, because this took a very long time to construct. And I know how often people accuse other people of stealing ideas, and personally I find it simply over-exaggerated and irritating, and I don't know, there's probably a word for it somewhere, I just can't think of it right now. Anyway, I call this the overflow. I don't know if anyone else calls it, but I do. So the overflow button is actually backwards. This torch powers this block, and as you'll notice, this is all glass except for this one block right here. This one block corresponds to when this reaches 9, or when this reaches 5. After that, it waits so many seconds, and then it rotates the next section. After that, it continues on, has another overflow gate. Also, the reason this is longer is because it is actually longer. That's why it looks longer on up here on the outside. This one and this one actually look longer. So that's how this one works. This one has 2, one for here and one for here, because it does, after all, hit 5 twice every cycle. This next area is over here, and finally this one area. The reason this is so much longer instead of shorter, it's simply 1 and 0 because it only goes to 19 and then 0 starts over again. The reason for that is because I built a 12-hour model of this clock, and rather than reconstructing this to be smaller, I simply used the 12-hour version of the clock and cut it in half. Oddly enough, this is actually still here. I'm not sure why I did that. I cut out the entire band, but I didn't cut out this or any of the respective pistons that should be pushing that specific band. I don't know why I did that. Just a little clinical error. So anyway, I would appreciate some kind of comment on that, how impressive it is or something. You know, everyone needs their self-esteem. So this has been my section on block physics and all of the little piston-based mechanics. Next section will be relatively short. It will be on the physics of how carts and rails work. It's not very short, it goes from there to there. And it covers pretty much everything you'd ever want to know about rails. The one after that goes from here all the way over there. That one is all on logic gates. So thank you for watching this video. I would appreciate a like or a comment or subscribe. Sorry about that. So I will see you guys in the next episode involving rail-based redstone mechanics. I will see you guys later.